Thank you, Bryce. Welcome, everybody, to this Sunday morning service here at Salt Lake Christian Church. The story that I will be telling you all this morning is about the pastor, Paul Washer. Paul was born in 1961 in Illinois, and he grew up on a cattle farm with his mom and dad and his older brother. His mom was a Christian, however, his father was not. And his father was, in fact, a pretty hard man. As you can imagine, being a cattle rancher, he would be. But his father loved his oldest son, Paul's older brother, clearly portraying and showing favoritism. And so as Paul grew up as a child, he often felt more fear towards his father than anything else. Yet while Paul was young, his older brother ended up dying in a car accident. And this, as you can imagine, pushed his father into despair. However, after some time and mourning, this tragedy allowed Paul to actually finally form a bit of a relationship with his father, to the point that they kind of became friends while Paul was a teenager. His father taught him how to work hard and how to put effort into things. A very important lesson. Yet, one day when Paul was only 17, him and his father were working on their ranch together, and his father collapsed of a heart attack and died. And this threw Paul into a spiral of depression and despair. And as a young man, he turned to alcohol more than anything else. And from then on, basically, he decided to just live his life how he wanted. He didn't really care much for the whole Christian thing that his mom tried to push on him when he was younger and tried to teach him about. And so he decided to go off to university to study being a land and oil lawyer in Texas. And it was here that he really came into himself in a negative way. Not only was he a partier and a drunk, but he was also a compulsive liar. Not because of any specific reason, just because he could, and because he was good at it. At one point, him and his buddy that he worked with, they wanted to get a day off of work to go do something, have some fun or something. And so he took his buddy into their boss's office and just made up a complete nonsense lie, a story to get him out of work. And it worked. They got the day off. And afterwards, when they left, his buddy turned to him and he said, "Man, Paul, you're scary. I knew you were lying and I believed you." And so, for several years as a young man, this is how Paul lived his life. And it wasn't until he was a few years into university, he had gotten to the point that he was just miserable in his life. He had plenty of friends, but no one that he trusted or could confide in. He was popular, but it meant virtually nothing to him. His only goal for living at that point essentially was to get decent grades and get his degree. And he was just miserable with himself. And one night, he got to the point where he didn't want to kill himself, but he just didn't want to live anymore either. And he was laying awake at night, unable to sleep, when he heard a knock on his dorm apartment door at about 1:30 in the morning. And he thought to himself, well, who the heck could this be? And so he goes and he opens his door, and it's this young freshman, this underclassman at the university that he had never spoken to beyond maybe just passing in the hall. And he's like, well, what are you doing here, right? And this young university student looked at Paul and he's like, man, you're probably going to beat me up. And I'm scared of you. That's how he started this conversation. And Paul looked at him and he's like, yeah, I probably will. However, this young freshman told him, he said, for the last couple of weeks, God has been putting it on my heart for me to come and talk to you. I don't know why exactly, but God told me that you're just miserable. And Paul thought to himself, well, I was thinking that in my head. I wasn't saying it out loud. There's no way he heard me through the door. Like, what? And so he got his attention. And this young freshman, he said, God wanted me to come and tell you that you are going to continue to be miserable in your life until you give your life to Christ. And so the two of them ended up going and walking around campus early in the morning till about 4 or 5 in the morning, just talking back and forth. And from then on, something changed in Paul. It was only a week or so later when he was attending one of his classes. They were doing a mock project, drawing up oil surveys and whatnot for his class, when this girl that was in his group came up to him and invited him to come to this party that she was throwing. And Paul looked at her and he thought for a moment, and it almost just slipped out of his lips. He just blurted out, no, I'm not going to go to your party because I've chosen to give my life to Christ and to follow him. And according to Paul's testimony, he said that the drinking and the partying and all of that was just removed. The desire was removed from him from that point on. And he wanted to serve Christ instead. However, he continued to struggle with his compulsive lying. He said that many times he would have to go back to his friends or teachers or whoever and apologize to them. And this humbled him quite a bit. Yet, Paul Washer, he ended up leaving that university and not finishing that degree as a lawyer. And instead, he went into the ministry and became a pastor. He said that as a young boy, before his older brother had even passed away, he used to have dreams of himself standing before a crowd of people up in front of a pulpit. And he would wake up in the middle of the night terrified, asking God, I don't want this. Please. Like, he even said that I would be saved and come to you, but just please don't make me preach. However, God had other plans for him. And so, that night, in that Texas university, Paul Washer's life was changed. And he gave his life to Christ. And Christ has used him to spread the gospel message and to preach to hundreds, if not thousands of people. So thank you. Let's bring the music up.